All right, today's Torah portion is Beshalach. All right, how many of you have heard of apostles? What is the word for apostle? In Hebrew, it is shalach, and it means to be sent. That's why Beshalach means to be sent. And who's being sent? We will take a look. But to begin with, this Torah portion, what are we covering? We are covering the epic crossing of the Red Sea. We're also going to cover Shabbat Shira, is what this is known as today, or Shirat HaYam, which means the song at the sea. Shira is song, Ha is the, Yam is sea. This is why you don't say Yom Kippur. It's Yom Kippur. Yom is day, Yom is sea. Okay, so here we're going to hear this beautiful song sung by Bill. Voice is going to sing this song. I'm kidding. I don't think he even heard me. Okay. Now, the other thing is we're going to hear about the manna falling from heaven, and then the end of the Torah portion is Amalek. All right, so here we start. First, though, I want to start with Leviticus chapter 23, verse 6 and 7. On the 15th day of the same month. What happens on the 14th day? Passover. But Passover is not a Sabbath. Okay? But the very next day, the 15th day of the month, begins the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and you're to eat unleavened bread for 7 days. Then it says the first day you will have a holy convocation or a Sabbath. And you'll do no work, but you are to offer an offering made by fire to the Lord 7 days. And then look at this. The seventh day is also a holy convocation or a Sabbath. All right, so it's a week long, 7 days. Passover is not a Sabbath, but the next day for 7 days is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and that first day is a Sabbath. That doesn't mean Saturday, okay? And then the seventh day as well. Okay, so now, here's Exodus. This is from last week's Torah portion, but I want to point this out because it is incredible. And you shall observe the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Why were they to observe the 15th of Nisan as a Sabbath? It says, because that is the very day, the selfsame day I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore, you shall observe this day in your generations for an ordinance for, a little while. No, forever. Okay, so on the 15th they killed the Passover lamb. On the 14th, they had the Passover lamb at midnight. Everybody, all the firstborn died, and then they took off on the run. And that was a Sabbath day. Okay, now, watch this. Here's Exodus 12:40. Now, the sojourning of the children of Israel, those guys who dwelt in Egypt, was for how many years? Now, that does not mean they were in Egypt for 430 years. That's just saying the group of people, the ones, that were in Egypt, their total sojourning time was 430 years. And look at this. It came to pass at the end of 430 years, even what? The self-same day that all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. 2 points I want to make here. One of them is God said he took the army of Israel. The armies. The reason I say that is, do you remember God said he was worried about the people? If they see war, they might go back, so he took them another way. Well, no, wait a minute. Why would God take the armies out and then not call them an army? It's because you got to read the whole text. Okay, we'll be looking at that. But now, what would be the one thing after you read this that you would want to wonder about. I'm trying to teach you how to study the Bible. The thing is, it says on the self-same day, 430 years earlier, something happened. What happened? What happened exactly to the day 430 years earlier? In my timeline book, I have it. To the very day. That is the very day Abraham was given the covenant by God for the promised land. Which means, when you're reading Genesis, you now know what happened on Passover. Wow. Just like Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed on Passover. Exactly. And now, here we see the covenant was given to Abraham. Here I have the King of the universe. And it was realized on this very day, exactly 430 years from today. Now, look at Exodus 13, 17 through 19. It came to pass when Pharaoh sent the people away. Okay, let me bring up the people. And they're headed out. Okay? It says that God led them not through the way of the land of the Philistines, which is the Gaza Strip, is really close to the promised land. It says, for God said, lest peradventure the people repent when they see war. And they returned to Egypt. But God led the people about through the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea. And the children of Israel went up harnessed out of the land of Egypt. That word harnessed means in military preparation. Well, so now wait a minute. When we read the people, who's he talking about? The Gentiles. All the non-Jews that accompanied Israel. He wasn't worried about Israel being afraid of war. He brought them out harnessed, militarily ready. But he was worried about all the Gentiles who are joining to Egypt, or that are leaving Egypt, may turn around and go back to Egypt. So when you're reading these, you got to separate when it says the people versus the children of Israel. And when you realize the Hebrew word for harness means militarily. And then Moses took the bones of Joseph, for he had straightly sworn the children of Israel, saying, God's going to surely visit you, and you carry me up and out of here. All right. Now, here's the other thing. Unleavened bread is on what day of the month? Nisan 15. What is significant about Nisan 15 according to the biblical calendar? It's always a full moon. It's always a full moon. Okay, now, let me get the water moving here. There, okay. Look at Exodus 14, 10 through 13. Can you imagine you're fleeing the Egyptians, and all of a sudden that's what's in front of you. And we're going to be there this coming April where they crossed on the other side, and it's about 10 miles. That's how far they had to cross on dry ground. About 10 miles. I don't know if you knew that. But that's the distance there. And it says, Pharaoh drew nigh, and the children lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were coming after them. And they were so afraid, and the children of Israel cried to the Lord. And now look what they said to Israel. Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you've taken us away to die here in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? Is not this what we said to you in Egypt? Just leave us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? I see this happening again today in our age. People want to serve the world, and they want to go back to the world. And then it says, look what they say. It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. And Moses said, don't fear, stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord, which he is going to work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you will never see again. Well, you know what's amazing to me about this is all they remember is like the garlic, the leeks, and the onions. They don't remember how all their children were killed by Pharaoh. Hello, what's going on here? And so what happens? This is what they see coming. Okay, Egad. And they see him. Where's my sound? Chill. I want my sound. Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. And they saw them coming, and the Egyptians saw them.
There they are! There they are!
That is also going to be in my book. Isn't that cool? Okay. And so, what does it say here? It says, and the angel of the Lord went before the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them. The pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel. And there was the cloud and the darkness, yet gave it light by night. And the one didn't come near the other all night. And what does it say Moses did? Stretched out his hand over the sea. So here's Moses stretching out his hand. God says, stretch out your hand. And the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all night and made the sea a dry land. And the waters were divided. So the children, this is the miracle most people miss, they went on dry ground. That is amazing. If you've ever been at the bottom of a bed that's covered with water, it's all mushy. Okay. Well, God made it dry ground. But you know what? Not only did he do that for them, he did that to deceive Pharaoh's chariots. Okay. Now, who was the first one to jump into the Red Sea? Nachshon. Nachshon was, and he was from the tribe of Judah, which is why Judah got to go first. Now, look at Exodus 14:23. The Egyptians pursued, and they went in after them to the midst of the sea, even all of Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen. Okay. And then look at Exodus 14:26-29. The Lord said to Moses, what? Stretch out your hand over the sea. And so here now we are. Here's Moses stretching out his hand. And here comes the waters, okay? And the sea returned to his strength that morning when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the middle of the sea. The waters returned, covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the host of Pharaoh that came to the sea after them. There remained not so much as one, but the children of Israel walked on dry ground in the middle of the sea, and the waters were a wall to them on the right hand and on the left. Well, you know what's amazing? And we even have it, if you want to, after the service, you can come up and take a picture. Every Torah scroll, it looks like this, and I'll make it a little bit closer. Watch this. They write it like this, and it's like a wall of water on each side, and the Hebrew letters of the Israelites running through the... Now, they could have done that in English, but for some reason in your Bible, you get cheated out of something. But you can come up and take a picture afterwards. Okay. Now, here's what is amazing, and this is what will help you understand a story in the Gospels. A lot of people have read the Gospels, but we've never made the connection back from the stories to the Torah. Look at, now, how many of you know the Jews have been celebrating Passover every year? Okay, it's been 1,500 years since Jesus was born. So they've been going over the book of Exodus every year for 1,500 years. Do you think they know the story? Okay, they know the story. And look at Exodus 3:20. It says, I will stretch out my hand and smite the Egyptians. Chapter 7, verse 5. The Egyptians will know that I'm the Lord when I stretch forth my hand on Egypt. Verse 19. And the Lord spoke to Moses, say to Aaron, take your rod and stretch out your hand upon the waters of Egypt. Exodus 9:15. God says, now I will stretch out my hand. 10:12. And the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand. 10:21. And the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand. Okay, how many of you got the concept? Okay. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to tell you a story here in just a minute. I got to set you up a little bit more. Now, look at Exodus 12:34. The people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading troughs being bound up in their clothes on their shoulders. Okay, now you've got to think about this. This is the day, the 15th, the first day. and all their stuff is bound up on their shoulders. They're carrying things. They're walking for miles. Now, you have to remember the 15th is a what? Okay, so here's what you got to understand. All right, here we go. The 14th, you see there, let's just say it was on a Wednesday. I'm just making an example. It's midnight. Every firstborn dies. The very next day, Thursday, is the 15th of Nisan, and it is what? A Sabbath. Well, then 2 days later, they have another Sabbath, the Saturday Sabbath, and then the 7th day, the 12th, is also a Sabbath, right? Okay, but look at this. God has them walking, carrying a load on the Sabbath. Oh, heaven forbid. Are you catching this? Oh, my goodness. Well, then they're marching, and they keep marching on that Sabbath, and they're marching, and they're marching, and they're marching, and then they cross the Red Sea on a Sabbath. They're continuing, saving their life. It is okay to carry a load and take your chariot or your car. Are you grasping this? And you know, every Jew knows this. God not only saved their lives, he killed the Egyptians on that day. Life or death can both take place on a Sabbath. Okay, now, it was on the 7th day, after leaving Egypt, that they arrived at the Red Sea. Pharaoh and his army rode their chariots after them. God performs a miracle. The sea split open. Israel walked through on dry land. Pharaoh charged forward. And this was a huge miracle. Okay? And then comes the song of Moses, and everybody's singing hallelujah. Now, this is the verse that isn't on your notes. You can write it down. But look at Exodus 14:31. Israel saw what? Oh, it's not on your notes. Just testing you. Saw that great hand which the Lord did upon the Egyptians. And the people feared the Lord, believed the Lord. They looked up, and there they saw God's great hand dividing the waters. Okay. Now, look at Exodus 15:1-3. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song to the Lord, saying, I think it's interesting that God has recorded a song, the little words to the song. And this is what they sang. I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously, the horse and rider thrown into the sea. And look, the Lord is my strength and song. He has become my Yeshua, okay, or my salvation. He's my God. I'm going to prepare a place for him. My Father's God. I will exalt him. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. Okay, now, the 7th day of unleavened bread is also a Sabbath of rest. But that was the very day Moses stretched forth his hand. The waters parted, and the hard-hearted Pharaoh and Egyptians were killed, and Israel miraculously was delivered. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the Gospels and show you one of the parables that Yeshua is explaining, but there's not a Gentile Christian alive that has ever made this connection, at least as far as I know. Look at this. I'm going to start with Matthew chapter 2, because a lot of people misunderstand this. Verse 27 and 28. He said unto them, the Sabbath was made for who? Okay, we were not made for the Sabbath, therefore the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. For some reason, people think, well, then he changed it. No, that means he's not going to change it. Now, I will prove that. Look at Matthew 12:8-14. For the Son of Man is Lord, even over the Sabbath day. So right there, a few chapters later, he tells us. And then it says, it came to pass also on another Sabbath, he enters the synagogue and taught. And behold, there was a man whose right hand was withered. And the scribes and Pharisees are watching to see if he would heal on the Sabbath day. They want to get him. But see, many people don't know, just like we have denominations in Christianity, they had denominations of Pharisees. There were 7 different denominations within the Pharisees, or sects. And as many of the Pharisees had no problem with them healing on the Sabbath day. So you can't lump everybody together. These particular ones didn't think it was all right to heal on the Sabbath day. And so they're watching to see so they can find an accusation against him. Now look at this. Messiah, or they asked the Messiah, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath days? And then he said, well, who among you that has a sheep and it falls in a pit on the Sabbath day, won't he lay hold of it and lift it out? Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath days or to do evil? You can do both. God saved Israel and he killed the Egyptians on the Sabbath day. Now look at this. To save life or kill. But they held their peace. And when he had looked around on them with anger, being grieved for what? Okay, if you're reading about a hardness of a heart, what does that take you back to? Pharaoh and the Egyptians. And he said to the man which had the withered hand, what? Stretch forth your hand. And he stretched it out and he was completely healed. Okay, he was reminding the hard-hearted Pharisees and scribes that God allowed Egypt to be killed and allowed Israel to work on the Sabbath, carry a load. They got healed or delivered from Egypt on the Sabbath. But you know what really got them mad? The Pharisees? Look at this. The Pharisees went out and they were filled with madness and held a council with the Herodians, how they might destroy him. Well, that's kind of over the top to want to destroy somebody just because they healed somebody. So why do you think they were really mad? What do you think really angered them? Okay, I'll tell you. Yeshua is playing the role of God, telling the crippled man, stretch forth your hand. That's what God was always telling. So he's playing the role of God. The man with the withered hand is playing the role of Moses. Okay? And they're playing the role of the hypocritical, hard Egyptians. That's what made them so mad, because they realized during the Passover story that God is comparing them to Egypt. Isn't that fascinating? So Yeshua never broke Torah. He explained it. All right. Now, you know what's amazing? That song at the sea, do you remember the Old Testament, or the Tanakh, is divided into 3 sections? The Torah, and does anyone remember the name of the other 2 sections? No. They're okay. The prophets, the Torah, the Nevi'im. Think of Tanakh, T, Torah, and Nevi'im, and then what's the K? The K is for the writings, everything else, Ruth, Esther, Job, and that's the Ketuvim. So it forms an acronym, Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, which makes up the Old Testament. That verse is the only verse in the whole Bible that appears in all 3 sections. It's the only one. And we see here in Psalm 118, the Lord is my strength and song, and he has become my salvation. Okay, so this is where it is in the writings. The other place, I'll show you in a second. Okay, so let's just go on. Okay, then it says the right hand of the Lord does valiantly. The other place is in the prophets, which is Isaiah 12, 2 through 6. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust, I will not be afraid, for the Lord God is my strength and song. He has become my salvation. With joy, you will draw water from the what? The wells of salvation. Now, I don't have this on your notes, but in John chapter 7, at the Feast of Tabernacles, they were all singing. And if you remember, Yeshua interrupts their song service and says, yes, as the scripture says, whoever follows me, out of their belly will flow rivers of living water. This is what they sing. Isaiah 12 is only 6 verses, and it was actually a song. And this is the song they would sing every year, every day of the Feast of Tabernacles. So this was going on, and guess what? He interrupts this song because he is the well of Yeshua. But look, they had to finish the song. And look at the last verse. Shout and sing for joy, O inhabitant of Zion, for great in your midst is the Holy One of Israel. Wow, he's the Holy One of Israel. But see, if you don't connect the Gospel of John chapter 7 to Isaiah 12, again, you miss a huge connection. But now, what happens? Exodus 15. Moses made Israel set out from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur, and they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. How long can you go without water? About 3 days. Okay, so they're a little thirsty. And when they came to Marah, which is bitter place, they couldn't drink the water because it was bitter. That's why it was named Marah. And the people grumbled. Can you imagine? You're in charge and you got a couple million people saying, Moses, where's water? And he's thinking, I'm supposed to give 2 million people water? Come on, give me a break. Okay, well now, the next chapter, Exodus 16. Now, the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And look what the children of Israel said. Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in Egypt when we sat by the flesh pots. We ate bread to the full. You brought us forth in the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Oh my gosh. This is incredible. What did they want? They wanted all the free stuff the government gave them. Wow, is there any parallel? They don't remember anything but everything, the free government staples they were given every month. And so what did God do? I got a little picture. He has manna fall from heaven. Exodus 16:4, the Lord said to Moses, all right, I'm going to cause it to rain bread from heaven, and the people will go out and gather a day's portion every day, that I can prove them whether they're going to walk in my Torah or not. Now, how come he didn't give them a week's portion? Could God have given them a week's portion? How come he gave them a daily portion? And when we say the Our Father is give us this day our what? And why is it our daily bread and not a week's worth? Because he knows if he gives you a week's worth, he won't see you till the beginning of the next week. You following me? All right. If you want to get rid of some of your kids, you have a bunch of money and say, get the heck out of here. But if you love them and you want to see them every day, God knows how to make you come back to him. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, and this is really important. There's a lot of people out there today that hoard wealth. We had someone here who passed away. And he was elderly, 80s or something, and he had like over $1 million of silver and gold in his house, under his bed, all around, you know. And it's like, my thought was, why don't you have the joy of seeing the people respond when you give it away? I mean, none of it went in the grave with him. For me, if you really want joy, before you pass away, have the fun of you blessing everyone and seeing the blessing. Okay. I have here, when we focus on hoarding wealth, it can turn into something spiritually ugly. Just as the manna turned rancid if you hoarded it, okay, when we cling to material things, we no longer need to rely on God. If all your trust is in your wealth, then you don't have that seeking God every day feeling. And that's the thing. We feel like we don't need to rely on God until something goes bad. All right, so just as Yeshua warned us, I say to you, it's hard for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven. That's why, let's look at Matthew 6, 19 through 21. Don't lay up yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust and thieves break through and steal and your children fight over. Give it to them before you die so you don't have to worry about it. Okay, where your treasure is, that where your heart is. Look at Psalm 62, 9 and 10. Those of low estate are but a breath. Those of high estate are a delusion. In the balances they go up. They are together lighter than a breath. Put no trust in extortion. Set no vain hopes on robbery. If riches increase, don't put your heart on it. Exodus 16:15-29. Moses says, eat the manna today. Okay, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you're not going to find it in the field. 6 days you'll gather. The seventh is the Sabbath, and there won't be any. And then it says, it happened on the seventh day, some of the people went out to gather, and they found none. And the Lord said to Moses, how long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? I hope that was in the plural, not the singular. Moses would have been really upset. And it says, behold, because the Lord has given you the Sabbath, therefore he gives you on the sixth day the bread. For 2 days, everyone stay in his place. Let no one go out of his place on the seventh day. Now, how come some of the people went out? I will tell you a midrash, a story. How many of you know Dathan and Abiram, well, those two guys that were always fighting that Moses separated when he killed the Egyptian, and they also were whining and complaining? Dathan and Abiram didn't like Moses' authority. So what they did, because they had it for 2 days, they took some of their portion and threw it out in the field, and then they went and told everybody the Sabbath did too, or the manna does too fall on the Sabbath. Come and look, Moses is the liar. So they all, because of what Dathan and Abiram did, thinking that it did fall on the Sabbath, they go out there, but the Lord had birds pick it all up, and there was nothing to find. Isn't that great? Okay, it was on the seventh day that some of the nation went out together, and they didn't find. Now, in general, listen to this, though. People use the word to find something, like I just read, okay, to refer to something they lost. Well, how come they're going to see if they can find manna on the seventh day when they hadn't lost any? But the manna did not come down. And why does the Torah use the words they did not find? And this is the story why I told you that story. Now, let's see. Exodus 17, 1-3. And there's no water again for the people to drink. Why the people did chide with Moses. And they said, give us water. And Moses said to them, why are you angry with me? Why do you tempt the Lord? And the people were thirsting for water. And the people murmured against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our cattle with thirst? What's interesting, that word murmur there in Hebrew is the word loon. And it means not only to stop, but stay the whole night. In other words, Moses is trying to sleep and everyone's outside the tent. Moses, all night long while he's trying to sleep. We want water. And so look this is one of the most hilarious things. Moses crying to the Lord. What am I going to do? They're ready to stone me. And the Lord said to Moses, go on before the people and take with you of the elders of Israel your rod with which you smote the river. Oh, I got the rod with I smote the river. I'm going to smote the people that are around my tent. So I see his tent, kind of tight shut. And the first thing he does, he sticks his rod out. Get back, and it's the rod. And they're backing up, I always thought that was funny. Okay, then he says, you will smite the rock and water will come out, that the people may drink. So Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah because of the chiding of the children of Israel, and because they tempted the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? And then it says, then came Amalek. Murmuring and complaining will always lead to an Amalek experience. Exodus 17, 15, 16, Moses built an altar, called the name of it Jehovah Nisi, or the Lord is my banner. For he said, because the Lord has sworn that the Lord will have a war with Amalek from generation to generation. What does that mean? What does that phrase mean? Amalek is going to be here for thousands of years. It's the spirit of Amalek. But this does not say Amalek is going to go to war against God, but God is going to go to war against that Amalek spirit in every generation. And in a couple of months in April, those who are going with me to Saudi Arabia, we're going to be where the split rock is. We're going to be at Sinai. We're going to be where they crossed the Red Sea. It's going to be so much fun. Now, a lot of people ask, well, what happened the year Yeshua died? Was Passover on a Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night? When was it? You know. Well, some people think he died on a Wednesday. But I can prove that crazy. Because if he died on a Wednesday, that made Thursday a Sabbath. Friday, they'd have had all day to go and take care of him. So it can't be a Wednesday because they'd have all day Friday. But what happens if he dies on a Thursday and Friday is a Sabbath? You have 2 Sabbaths in a row. They can't get to him. Now, one thing you can do is ask AI. But you ask AI something that has nothing to do with the Bible. You ask AI, in 30 AD, when was the vernal equinox and when was the first full moon? Wow. They're very scientific, and guess what? Here's what it said. The vernal equinox in 30 AD was Wednesday, March 2nd, the first full moon following the spring equinox, commonly referred to as the Paschal full moon, occurred on Thursday, April 6th on the Julian calendar. So guess what? That means the Last Supper was a Wednesday night. He died on Nisan 14. That night was the full moon when they had to have the next day be the 15th, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So here it's scientifically proven that he died on a Thursday. Friday was the Sabbath and the Sabbath following. Hope that helps. Okay, let's stand. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, we just thank you so much for everything you're teaching us. And I just pray right now, Lord, again, that we would learn from history. And we know we're living at the end times. And we just pray that you would give all of us wisdom and ears to hear what you want to tell us. And Lord, I thank you for all those live streamers around the world, around the United States, and those who are here live in our little TV studio. Father, I just thank you so much for all of them because their treasure is in heaven. It's not here on earth. They want to build your kingdom. We all want a part. Just like, can you imagine? Everyone would want to take place of building Moses' tabernacle back then. Everyone gave willingly because they're building something greater than themselves, something that's going to last for all of eternity. And we're so excited that we can also participate in building your kingdom, taking the light of your Torah to all the nations, even as you said in Isaiah. Your goal is to make the Torah magnified and honorable once again. In Yeshua's name, amen. Together, blessed are you, Lord our God, creator and king of the universe. You have blessed us with your Torah of truth. You have blessed us with the whole counsel of your living word by the power of your Holy Spirit. Through the completed work of Messiah Yeshua, you alone have planted among us life eternal. Blessed are you, Lord our God. Amen. Take a break. So we are so grateful. Okay, now we are on 2 Kings as we're moving right along. And before we jump to 2 Kings, I want to remind everybody of what happened last week. Here, 1 Kings 22, the last chapter, the last few verses, it says, Ahaziah, the son of Ahab, began to reign over Israel in Samaria. And look at this. It says it was in the 17th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah. And how long did he reign? Just 2 years. Why? Because he did evil in the sight of the Lord. He walked in the way of his dad Ahab, and in the way of his horrible mother, and in the way of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin. He served Baal. He worshipped him. he provoked to anger the Lord God of Israel according to all that his father had done. Okay, so now this brings us to 2 Kings, verse 1 and 2. Moab rebels against Israel after the death of Ahab. Okay, so Ahaziah, his son, we just read, became king. He only reigned 2 years. Well, look what happens. He falls down through a lattice in his upper chamber that was in Samaria, and he was sick. And so, what does he do? He sent messengers and said, go and inquire of Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, the god of Ekron. Now, Ekron is in the Gaza Strip area. Whether I'm going to recover from this disease. What? This is the king of Israel. Why isn't he going to the God of Israel? Why is he going to the God? That is horrible. So look what happens in verse 3 and 4. An angel of the Lord says to Elijah the Tishbite, arise, go up to meet these messengers of the king of Samaria and tell them. Notice he doesn't say Ahaziah. He doesn't even get to have his name mentioned. Is it not because there's not a God in Israel that you go to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Now, therefore, thus saith the Lord, you are not, go tell the king, you are not going to come down from that bed on which you have gone up, but you will surely die. And Elijah went on his way. And so the king gets all upset. And he says, go get Elijah and bring him back here. And so in 2 Kings 1:9, the king sent unto Elijah a captain of 50 with this 50. And what is it? He went up to him, and behold, Elijah is sitting on the top of a hill called Mount Carmel. And the captain of the 50 with the 50 said, hey, you man of God, the king has told you to get down here. And so in verse 10, Elijah answered, and he said to the captain of the 50, well, if I'm a man of God, if that's true, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. And the fire came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. So now, Ahaziah the king is really mad. And so in verse 11, 12, he sends them another captain of 50 with his 50. And he also goes to Elijah and says, oh, man of God, the king has said, you get down here now. And Elijah said, well, if I'm a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. And fire came down and consumed all of them. So what does the king do? He sends a third guy. And this guy comes, and he falls down on his knees before Elijah. And he besought him and said, oh, man of God, I pray you, don't kill me. And don't kill the other 50 with me. Let them all be precious. Well, and so Elijah says, fine. And we see in verse 17, Ahaziah, the son of Ahab, died according to the word of the Lord which Elijah had spoken. And now Ahab's grandson, Jehoram, reigns instead. Okay, now look at this. Chapter 2, verse 1 and 2. It came to pass, the Lord's going to take up Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind. So Elijah went with Elisha to Gilgal. And Elijah said to Elisha, stay here. The Lord has sent me to Bethel. And Elijah said to him, the next place. Elisha says, no way, I'm going with you to Bethel. So he went with him to Bethel. And then Elisha says, Elisha, you stay here because now the Lord has sent me to Jericho. And Elisha says, no way, I'm going with you. And so when they get to Jericho, Elijah says to him, you stay here. The Lord has sent me to Jordan. He says, no way, I'm going with you everywhere. So you can see him. I think this is kind of a test, to see if he really wants to. And then look at 2 Kings 2. Elijah took his mantle. He wrapped it together, and he smote the waters of the Jordan, and they were divided hither and thither. And they went over on dry ground. And it came to pass when they were gone over, Elijah says to Elisha, what do you want me to do for you before I go? And we see in 2 Kings 2, second half of verse 9 through 11. Elisha says, I want a double portion of your spirit upon me. And Elijah said, you've asked a pretty hard thing. Nevertheless, if you see me when I am taken up, it'll happen. But if you don't see me, it's not going to happen. And it came to pass, as they still went on and talked, behold, there appears a chariot of fire with horses of fire, and separated the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind to heaven. And so I created this for you guys to see. Woohoo! I'm going to see if I can't make that alive and have the horses moving, and that'd be kind of cool. So I'm going to work on that next. Okay. Now look at 2 Kings 2, 19 through 22. Everyone saw that the mantle was put on Elisha, and he has a double portion. And so in 2 Kings 2, 19 through 22, the men of the city said unto Elisha, behold, I pray you, the situation of this city is pleasant, as my Lord sees, but there's no water. The ground is barren. And so Elisha says, well, bring me a new cruse. And he put salt in it. And they brought it to him, and he went forth unto the spring of the waters, and cast the salt in there, and said, thus saith the Lord, I have healed these waters. There shall not be from thence any more death or barren land. So the waters were healed unto this day, according to the saying of Elisha. So now in this story, we're seeing all the miracles that Elisha is doing, just like Elijah did. And then we see in verse 23 to 24, from there he goes up to Bethel. You're not going to believe this story. If you've never heard this story, this is going to be a shock and awe. And let everybody pay attention to these words. As he was going up, there came some kids out of the city, and they mocked him. And he said, get going, you bald head. Get going, you bald head. Elisha turned around and looked at him, and he cursed them in the name of the Lord. And there came out 2 she-bears and tore up 42 of the kids that were yelling at him. Yeah. Had you ever read that one before? Okay. Well, now we're on 2 Kings chapter 3. Jehoram, who is now really the grandson, they will say son, but it could be grandson, or just like Father Abraham could be your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. No, I'm wrong. Jehoram was his son. He had more than one son. Okay. He began to reign over Israel. He had Ahaziah, his first son, but Jehoram was also his son. And he reigned in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and he reigns 12 years. Okay, now, what do we see in 2 Kings 3, 4, and 5? Mesha, he was the king of Moab, and he took care of a bunch of sheep. And look at this, Moab was serving Israel, and he rendered unto the king of Israel 100,000 lambs, 100,000 rams with the wool. But it came to pass after Ahab died that the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel and says, I ain't doing this anymore. This means war. Okay. And so we see in verse 6 and 7, King Jehoram went out of Samaria the same time, and he numbered all of Israel. And how many of you know you're not supposed to number the people? And he went, and he goes to Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah. This is one time when the king of Judah and the king of Israel actually got along. Usually they're always killing each other. But here they got along. And he said, the king of Moab has rebelled against me. Will you go up with me against Moab to battle? And he said, sure, I'll go up. I'm as you are. My people is your people. My horses is your horses. And so what do we see in verse 10 and 11? Now, the king of Judah, he's pretty smart. But here the king of Israel says they're about to lose. They see they're about to lose. And he says, oh, the Lord has called these 3 kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab. But Jehoshaphat says, well, isn't there here a prophet of the Lord that we can inquire of the Lord? And one of the king of Israel's servants answered, well, yeah, here is who? Elisha, the son of Shaphat. And what does Shaphat mean? Judge. Judge. And Elisha, guess what? He poured water on the hands of Elijah. He's got the same mighty power. Okay, verse 14 and 15. Elisha says, as the Lord of hosts lives before whom I stand, surely were not that I regarded the presence of Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, I wouldn't even look at you nor see you, O king of Israel. But now bring me a minstrel. And it came to pass, when the harpist harped, that the hand of the Lord came upon Elisha. And then what do we see in the next few verses? They got up early in the morning. Oh, here's what he told them to do is put a whole bunch of water in these ditches and things. And then here they're coming, and the sun is rising, and the sun shone on the water, and the Moabites saw the water on their side as red as blood. And they go, ha, this is their blood. The kings of Israel and Judah are surely slain. They've killed one another, therefore Moab to the spoil, and they go and attack. But guess what? That was trickery. And then in verse 26, when the king of Moab saw the battle was too sore for him, he ran away with 700 men that drew swords to break through even unto the king of Edom. So they're trying to go to that country, but they couldn't do it either. Now this, I tell you what, this is the spirit of Amalek. This is the spirit of the Palestinians today. This is where I want you, you have to look at what happened. How many of you know if the parents of Palestinians send their 8-year-old with the suicide vest and the 8-year-old blows himself up in Israel, they blame Israel? You know what I'm talking about? That spirit comes from this Bible here. It talks about it. Did you know that? Look right here. It says the king of Moab, broke through. And then look at this. The king of Moab took his oldest son that should have reigned after him, and he offered him for a burnt offering on the wall. But look, and there was great indignation against Israel. Wait a minute. Why is there great indignation of Israel? Because the king of Moab sacrificed his own son. Well, if Israel hadn't threatened to attack, he wouldn't have killed him. Do you see what I'm talking about? No matter what, Israel is always blamed for even the crazy things the other people do. But this is a verse you really got to remember when you see what's going on with the Palestinians. But now look what happens. In 2 Kings 4:1, there cries a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets. We're talking about the wife of one of the prophets in Israel. And she said, your servant, my husband, is dead. And you know that your servant did fear the Lord. And the creditors come to take him, my 2 sons, to be bondmen. And Elisha says, well, that ain't going to happen. So Elisha says to her, what do you want me to do for you? Tell me. What do you have in your house? And she said, your handmaid doesn't have anything except a pot of oil. And then he said, well, go borrow 3 vessels from your neighbors, empty vessels, and borrow not a few. And when you come back here, you should shut the door upon you and upon your sons. And then I want you to pour out this oil, this little bit of oil that you have, into all the vessels that you have set aside until it's full. Wow. So here we have a miracle of this little pitcher of oil filling all these big. Now, let me just bring you this. How many of you trust God? But how many of you really trust God? How many of you trust God for food in a famine? How many of you trust God for food during the tribulation? I believe in storing up food. Okay, but for me, it's to give it away. It's not just for me, but I firmly believe God can multiply your food. I firmly believe I will be able to sit down at the dinner table with an empty plate on it and food will appear. Maybe a bird will bring some food in for me like he did for Elijah. Or food could miraculously just appear on the plate. if you really trust God, you don't, the manna fall from heaven, whatever. But I mean, if we really believe in God, you're not going to fear during times of famine or tribulation. Okay, now, here we are. And then in 2 Kings 4:7, she came and told Elisha, and he said, great, go sell the oil and pay your debt, and, you guys keep the rest. Wahoo! Okay, so now I'm going to show you one of my timeline charts. Okay, I have my little doomer hicker here. Okay, for all you on screen, you'll be able to see what I do on the screen like this here. See all that? Okay. I want you to notice I put, here, let me get rid of that. You'll notice up at the top that first Shemitah cycle in 30:43 a.m., Prophet Elijah is the main guy in 2 Kings 1 and 2. Right next to that is Numa Pompilius. He's the one who took over the Roman calendar because the main Roman guy who started it thought there was only 10 months in a year. And now 60 years later, he goes, duh, there's 12. So he adds 2 months. Okay, then you go. It was in the 436 Shemitah cycle that next week. Here is where you have Ahaziah, who was only king for 2 years, and then Jehoram was king for 12 years. They both had more than one name. That's why you can get confused if you don't realize this. The same person has more than one name, just like, Moses' father-in-law. Okay, this is the year Elijah got taken up into heaven. Okay, and now you have the prophet Elisha. He's coming around. And then we find out there's 2 Yehorams. There's a Jehoram king of Israel and a Jehoram king of Judah. Another reason why sometimes people get confused. Okay, and what's amazing, Jehoram, the king of Judah, ends up marrying Ahab's daughter from the king of Israel. Okay, so this is why a lot of them, if you remember, they were getting along. But anyway, then in the 438th Shemitah cycle, I have the son of Jehoram. He also was an Ahaziah. Isn't that amazing? See, that's why people get confused. They don't realize a lot of them have the same names, but they're from different areas. And look at this. We're going to be reading about this story coming up next week, I believe. But look what happens. Yehu becomes king for 28 years, and he marries the daughter of King Omri, okay? Queen Athaliah. She ends up becoming queen for 6 years. Did you know there was a queen of Judah? Yep, there she is, right there. But anyway, we'll be going through this timeline, but I just want to give you a rough rundown of kind of where we are at in the timeline. Okay, now, look at this. 2 Kings 4:8. It fell on a day. That's a famous phrase. It fell on a day. Elisha goes to Shunem. Okay? Where's Shunem? Anybody know where Shunem is? Does the name Shunem ring a bell? Big miracle happened there. Okay. Okay, see the Sea of Galilee. You'll see Nain right there. Oh, let me go to my little color. Okay, right here is Mount Tabor. Down here is Mount Moreh, and you have Nain and Shunem. Elijah did a miracle on one side of the mountain, and the Lord did a miracle on the other side of the mountain. Okay, so this, and Moreh means teacher. All right, but I just wanted to give you an idea of 2 big events, Old Testament and New Testament, that happened right there. So Elisha goes to Shunem. Okay, he's to the south of Mount Moreh. And there was a great woman. And she said, come eat some bread. And so it was, as often as he passed by, he would always go there to eat bread. And then she says to her husband, you know what? I think this guy's a holy man, which passes by us continually. Let us make a little chamber, I pray you, on the wall, and let us set for him a bed, and a table, and a stool, and a candlestick. And it'll be, whenever he comes this way, he'll come here. And it fell on a day that he came there, and he turned into the chamber and went to sleep. And now look at this in chapter 4, verse 14 through 17. And Gehazi is Elisha's servant. And they want to do something nice for this couple who, this was the first Airbnb. And Gehazi says she doesn't have any children, and her husband is old. And he said, okay, go get her. And when he got her, she stood in the door, and he said, about this season, according to the time of life, you're going to embrace a son. And she said, no way, you man of God, don't you lie to me. But the woman conceived and bore a son at that season that Elisha had said to her, according to the time of life. What is the Hebrew word for season here? Moed. This happened on a festival. It could have been Passover, Pentecost, Tabernacles. This happened on a divine appointed time. Now look at verse 18. And when the child was grown, it fell on a day. He went out to his father. They're reaping a harvest. Guess what? Passover's the barley harvest. Okay. Pentecost is the wheat harvest. Again, this is telling us it is during a feast day. And he said to father, I need a Tylenol. My head. And he said to a lad, quick, carry him to his mom. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees until noon, and then he died. But what does she say? She calls her husband and says, quick, send me one of the young men and one of the donkeys that I can run to the man of God and come again. And he said, where will you go to him today? It's not a new moon. It's not a Sabbath. And she said, I don't care. Off she goes. Now, look at verse 25 and 26. It came to pass, when the man of God saw her far off, he said to Gehazi, his servant, look here. Yonder there is that Shunammite. Why don't you go run to meet her and tell her, is everything okay? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with the child? And she answered, it is well. Okay, what's going on here? What do you think is going on? What are you reading into this? She does not trust Gehazi at all. We know it's not well. Her son has died. She has no trust in Gehazi. Now, is Gehazi a good guy or a bad guy? Well, he definitely is in it for himself. And women tend to have more discernment than men on a lot of things. How do I know? I had 5 older sisters. Okay. And look at this. In 2 Kings 4:27. When she finally got to the man of God, to the hill, she caught him by the feet, but Gehazi came near to thrust her away. Whoa, look at this guy. He's supposed to be God's servant, and he's trying to get the poor lady whose son died out of the way. Can you see his attitude? This is the same attitude as the scribes and the Pharisees had when he was trying to heal the man with the withered hand. But the man of God said, leave her alone. Her soul is vexed, and the Lord has hid it from me. Let's find out why. What's going on? And so he finds out he's died. And so what does he do? He tells his servant, gird up your loins, take my staff in your hand, and hurry up. And I don't care if you meet anybody, don't salute them. If anyone salute you, don't answer them. And you get back to her house and you lay the staff on the face of the child so that he'll be healed. Now, if Gehazi is a good guy, do you think the child will be healed? Could be. But if he's not a good guy, he definitely won't be healed. So he ran ahead. Elisha and the great woman from Shunem are slow going getting back there. Well, look what happens. In 2 Kings 4, 31 and 32, Gehazi passed on before him. He laid the staff upon the face of the child. There was no voice, there was no hearing. Wherefore he went again to meet him, and he told him, saying, the child hasn't woke up. And when Elijah had come into the house, behold, the child was what? He is dead. See, this is why Shunem is important, because in Shunem, he raises someone from the dead. And in the Gospels, in Nain, Yeshua also performs a miracle, and it's both around the Mount Moreh, where you get the word Torah from as well. Okay. Now, let's look at 2 Kings 4, 40 and 41. He gets healed. Okay. So now we're going to go to the next story. Here, now, they pour out for the men to eat, and it came to pass, as they were eating some food, someone cried out and said, "O man of God, there's death in the pot." And he couldn't eat it. But he said, "Then bring meal." And he cast it into the pot, and he said, "Pour out for the people that they may eat." And there was no harm in the pot. So again, this section here is showing Elisha as a model of Elijah and the miracles he is performing. And then chapter 4, the closing verses there. Here comes a man from Baal, Shalisha. And he brought the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley. What time of year is this? What time of year is this? Barley harvest. When is the barley harvest? Spring. Wheat harvest is summer, and the grape harvest is fall. So I want to teach you guys, as you're reading these things, start connecting the dots, okay? And he said, "Give to the people that they may eat." And his servant said, "What? Am I supposed to set this bread before 100 men? And he said again, "Give it to the people that they can eat. For thus saith the Lord, they shall eat, and there'll be leftovers." So he set it before them, and they did eat, and left thereof, according to the word of the Lord. What does this remind you of? What story? The feeding of the multitude. Okay? There is nothing that happens in the New Testament that's new. And it really shouldn't even be called the New Testament. It should be called the New Covenant. And in a couple weeks, I'll be talking about, I got homework for you guys. I'm not going to let you guys go without homework. Okay, now this is important homework. This is important homework, and I want you to write down, and I want you guys to answer this question. Are we in the time of the New Covenant? The New Covenant, yeah. Yeah, this is the New Covenant. Who was the New Covenant made with? And what are the elements of the New Covenant? I say, okay, we're in the New Covenant, yay! What does that mean? I want you to write down, what does the New Covenant mean? What does it mean to be, what are the stipulations of the New Covenant? What did God say he would do? Okay, but I have a list of about 20 things. So don't think one or two. So I want you to write down, what did God say he would accomplish through the New Covenant? What did God say he would accomplish when he instituted the New Covenant? I'm telling you, all you online, you got to do it too. I'm telling you, this is going to revolutionize your life. This is going to revolutionize your thinking. Because so often people, they don't really know how to define the things that they believe in. Do you believe this? Oh, yeah. Well, what does that mean? Well, I don't know. Okay. So though this is really very good homework for everybody who's trying to go back to the Hebraic roots to know who is the New Covenant made with. I mean, how many of you know at every single church they're all going to say they're part of the New Covenant? And if you were to ask them, well, what does that mean? I think one person will be able to tell you what it means, maybe one or two answers. Yeah, one more time. What did God say he would accomplish with the new covenant? What did God say the new covenant came for? What does he plan on doing? Now, this is going to involve some real homework, not just some minor AI isn't going to tell you. Yeah, the new covenant, what did God say he would accomplish? Now, I'm saying this seriously for your own sake. This isn't just for fun because I like fun. You guys really need to know how to answer that question because this will help you talk to Christians who are clueless. Okay, all right, let's stand.